Welcome, everybody, to the GTRI virtual Splunk Bootcamp, where we will give you an introduction to Splunk and its use for operational efficiency. And we also have a lab server for your use as well. Now, so a few others will be joining us as time goes on, but I'll bring them up to speed as we go. A few housekeeping tips for you. You will notice, first of all, that in the upper left-hand corner, where you'll see the menu for the Event Center, you can click on File. And when you click on File, you can click on Transfer. And when you do that, you will get a screen that allows you to download 3 files. The 3 files are the logins file, logins.pdf, a PDF of the slide deck we're going to give today, and a Word document that contains the labs you're going to do. Now, so go ahead and download these 3 files, and when you do, you will find that in the logins.pdf, you will have a chart where you can look at your name, and here you can see it displayed here. Look up your name, and you will see the username password you can use to initially get into the your lab server. Once you do, the lab will instruct you to configure time zone and a new password. This is only so that the different students don't accidentally step on each other's setups. Okay? Our presenter today is Scott Anderson. He has years of experience in configuring, architecting, and using Splunk in large-scale operations. He's a certified Splunk trainer. And GTRI, just to let you know, is the first elite partner of Splunk in the world, actually. We are one of only 2 training centers in North America, and we have professional services. We have 5 architects on staff. We have the ability to help any company with Splunk from pre-sales all the way to professional services. With that, I am going to turn over the presentation to Scott Anderson.
Thanks, Avi. I appreciate you introducing things and getting things rolling. I'll cover a little bit of what you said again, just to make sure everyone is on the same page. But welcome. My name is Scott Anderson. I've been working with Splunk for quite some time, as Avi had said. I've actually done professional services along with training, and so I'm not just someone who's been hanging out just looking at training stuff. I actually go into the field and work with things as well. So as Avi said, we've got a couple of files you can download. You'll probably want to get those, a copy of the slides, the lab doc, which you can follow through and do as we go. We will give time to do the labs as we go through the webinar. So this actually provides you with an opportunity to play with Splunk and some of the data contained therein. It's really easy to install Splunk on your own laptop, your own box, and play with it a little bit. But what is not so easy sometimes is to get a data source in there and play with that. So we set up this server. We'll have logins to that server, and it allows you to look at data actually flowing in. So we encourage you to take advantage of that. Other than that, I think we've got about 19 people in or so. That's about the average for the amount that signed up. So I think we should be going just fine. If you cannot find your name, honestly, in that document, sometimes people sign up late and don't quite make the cut when we pull down the latest version of that. If you can't find your name on it, go ahead and send a chat message over to Avi. He'll be in charge of trying to make sure you get people, to make sure the new people don't step on each other in accounts as far as that goes. There's no real mystery as to what the pattern is or what account would be open out there, but if you need a mapping to that, he'll try to manage that. So I'm going to concentrate on going through the material. Avi is also a Splunk architect, so he can answer all sorts of questions as well. I'm more than happy to answer them as we go along, but in order to keep things rolling, 2 hours, honestly, is not a lot of time to talk about some of this stuff. So if we can keep rolling, and you can throw this to Avi, and either he can answer it as we go, or we can hit you online later after we're done. That would be fine as well. All right, so I'm going to jump in and just kind of get to the slides here. First off is the download. If you don't know where to download, you can go over to the file transfer area in WebEx and go ahead and download those slides that have been published. You see how long I've had this slide around. It says using 5.0. That would be Splunk 5.0. Splunk is no longer 5.0. Splunk is now at 6.2, and we actually have the latest version out there on our servers as well. So if you haven't had a chance to see that, that'll be a chance to kind of get into that the newest version as well. All right. So let me just underscore a little bit of what Avi was talking about with GTRI. We have to do the marketing up front. We'll do a little bit of that, and then we'll jump into the slides. I have like 3 marketing slides, and we'll go through this pretty quickly. GTRI is a partner in a lot of different areas. It's not only a partner with Splunk, but it's also partners with various hardware groups. We have a slide coming up about that. We're ISO certified. We deal in both the Fed and commercial space. So we do both training, we do licensing, and we do professional services for Splunk. So we're kind of positioned very well because we're also a good partner with Cisco, and that'll be in a slide. I think the next slide. So we're well positioned to kind of be a liaison between some of the hardware and the monitoring of that hardware. So just kind of keep that in mind. Let's see. Over 10 years hands-on experience. I'm just going to go through. Culture of customer focus, operational excellence. We're getting ISO certified for things, and so we're looking at processes designed to mitigate any of the risks and get those together. So if you have anything that we can help you with, we would be more than happy to do that, to kind of point you in the right direction, or to provide you with services if that's something that you would be interested in. Our Splunk practice, as Avi said, the first elite partner. 1 or 2 certified training centers. He kind of went through this. We can go from pre-sales all the way into implementation and customization after that. And we have lots and lots of credentials. This, honestly, I think was a snapshot of where we were at the beginning of the year. Since then, we're onboarding several more, and so we have this kind of gives you a feel for the different certifications we have. The actual numbers have kind of migrated a little bit, but we're getting a lot more architects and solutions engineers by the end of this year as well. So I'm not going to go through that anymore. So here's kind of a look at GTRI and different hardware and things that we're partners with. Things like Citrix, Cisco, lots of Cisco stuff. We deal with VMware, and so we're definitely positioned well to look at hardware and its visibility. So not only just looking at general data, but we're definitely specialists at looking at some network infrastructure as well, along with security. All right, I think that gets me through my marketing slides. So for the agenda for today, I got through marketing with 8 minutes in. So I think that's pretty good. Our agenda at this point, we'll look at providing you guys with a fundamental understanding of what Splunk is and kind of how it works. There is no prerequisite for this. We will start at basically the beginning and try to work you through some of these things. We have some hands-on examples, not only from a demo from my standpoint, but actually a lab that will help you explore different things as we go through. And we'll spend we have 4 different labs. We'll spend some time with each of those labs to get those up and running and let you guys kind of play with the environment and look at how Splunk is actually used in the real world. The lab itself is going to be open until about probably about 10 o'clock my time. I'm in Mountain Standard Time, so that would put it at midnight Eastern Time. So you can do the mapping of whatever time zone you're in as far as that goes. Looks like we have one issue of someone who's not being able to hear. I know it looks like Avi's kind of looking at that. So if you're having some issues, hey, if you can't hear me, text something. That's nice, guy. At any rate, let us know if you're having problems, and we'll see if we can solve this as we go. Labs are incorporated. People learn a little faster. At least I learn a little better if I'm actually able to touch things and play with them. So occasionally we'll have these links across the bottom. They'll be in your slides as well. This, I do believe, is a link to a particular app that, but I just want to put one in there so you can kind of point those out. I'll point those out as we go. They will provide different information from the Splunk website as to what we're talking about. And if you want to dig in deeper, like I said, we won't have time to go into a lot of detail here, but it should give you a good overall understanding of kind of how these things work. All right. Topics. We're going to look at the Splunk overview, an architect, a little bit about Splunk architecture, go into some data collection, looking through your data, and then automating things, and a quick look at a couple of Splunk apps, as far as that goes. All right, so the first thing is an overview. What is Splunk? So you guys are on here. We don't assume you know anything about Splunk. You know something probably, or you wouldn't have come to the webinar, but let's give you a quick overview. And to do that, I'm going to share out my screen, and I'm going to give you a little demo as to how these things look. So your screen will flash a little bit. It flickers and brings things up. Hopefully, there we go. I think we're getting there. All right. So this is the Splunk login screen. So I'm just going to log into Splunk out there. We have a server out there. This is the same server that you guys are going to be on. So let me just log in here. So once you get your credentials, you should be able to log in just like this. This is the new splash screen, the landing page for Splunk 6.2. If you're not used to looking at that, that's the new way that you log in and the new screen you get to. So a couple things I'll point out right off the bat. You've got your login up here. One of the things we do in one of the first labs, I think it's the second lab actually, is we go in and edit our account. We're clicking on that and say change our time zone to be something that, unless you want to look at the GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, if you want to look at that, that's fine. But if you don't want to, if you want to make it something local, you can customize that. Then I always kind of, you can change your password as well, and it's not a bad thing because everyone will know what your password is right now. And just to make sure you have your own sandbox and that other people don't get in there, that's a nice thing to change. But that's part of one of the labs. So I just want to point that out while I'm here. We will go back over to here, and what I wanted to show you is just what is Splunk and how does it work? What does it do? What are we looking at? So to do that, I'm not going to talk through the details of what I'm doing here, but I will pull up some data. So basically, our Splunk environment is looking at machine data. It's looking at pulling in information that is being generated on the fly from different systems. Right now, you can see a bunch of what we call events coming in down here. You can see it scrolling by as we go. They're from various machines. They're from various systems, various subsystems, and it's collecting and aggregating all this information into one spot. So that, first of all, is one of the best things about Splunk if you're a larger company, is that instead of having all of your files distributed across your 50 web servers or 80 instances of your application, all of them put their log files in one spot, and so you have one place for a developer to look at a log file. So that's one advantage of having Splunk just right off the bat. It aggregates all your information, puts it in one spot. You see there's different profiles of information going across. Some of the events are small, some of them are large, and they're coming across. In this case, it's not a very heavily loaded environment, but it's loaded enough that you couldn't look through this by hand and understand what's going on in the system. So what Splunk is able to do is it's able to take this type of information and allow you to kind of dig in. So what I've got rolling right now is the data as it's coming into Splunk. So we start out with something like this, and what Splunk allows us to do, and I'm just going to pull up a Cisco Security Suite application. Wait for it here a second. It takes that information that's kind of scrolling across, and it allows us to visualize it and look into what's going on to the system right now and understand what's happening. So rather than seeing a bunch of data scrolling by, you can actually go through and characterize what's happening. In this case, we're looking at different IPs that are coming across the system and looking at where they're coming from. So they're coming from various places around the world in this case. How are your network traffic? How is that coming in? What threats are there? So we have access lists, we have malware, we have a bunch of things that the Cisco Security Suite right now is tracking and looking at. So what we're basically doing is we're taking that data that's coming in, that raw data, that text that's very hard to understand and hard to look at, and we're making it accessible and we're making it usable. So we can see different things in this particular area. We have things like firewall overviews. That one real quickly. Take a look at what's going on there. And so different places, a number of events that are coming in, access control lists checking, different IPs, top sources, top destinations, the different protocols that are coming in. There's various other things. I'm not going to go into all the things that this app has, but a web security overview. Look at your web security events, different traffic by severity, so you can see different things coming in. Makes a pretty looking chart as far as that goes. And looking at various things, access control lists, the top users, the top destinations. So all that data that's coming in that we were looking at just to start with, and I can go back there real quick, and I'll put that search back in. The data that's coming in, it looks like this, over the last 30-second window, all gets pulled in and made accessible and where you can visualize what's going on. So this isn't particularly understandable, but the charts are. So that's one of the reasons you want Splunk. The other thing is that you can combine a bunch of information across different log files. You're not looking at just one log file in this case. We're looking at lots of different sources. Performance data. We're looking at your web servers, your proxies, firewalls. All that data is combined, and you can look at a slice of time on what's happening at any particular millisecond across all of your systems. So there's business value, and there's also operations value and security value in all of this data. So that's kind of my overview, just briefly. Let me go back and take a look a little bit at a PDF here, back to what's published to you. Get back to where we were. So, how is Splunk used? So we understand that Splunk is a way of collecting all sorts of machine data. What different ways is Splunk implemented? And in Splunkese, and the way they speak of it with Splunk is the use case. So what is your use case? So a lot of times you'll have things like a security use case, or you'll have a network operations center or a security operations center, a NOC or SOC. You're looking at application logs. Those are some pretty traditional use cases. There's also more custom use cases, things like SCADA data, which tends to be operational data about different things that are going on right now in an environment. We pulled out the election data on here. There is a Splunk for Good site that has actually taken campaign contribution records, and that's a public record out there, and made it accessible via Splunk, so you can actually drill down to see in your neighborhood who has contributed to what party, and that's kind of an interesting way of doing it. So that's a non-traditional use of Splunk. Energy consumption. I've actually seen an application of someone who has instrumented his circuit panel, and with little gauges basically that transmit how much power is going through each circuit in his house. So you can see when you turn on a hot water heater, for example, if it's electric, you can see your energy consumption go up in real time. That's kind of reasonably trivial, kind of fun, but it's just data. So Splunk doesn't really care what the data is. Traditionally, it is data associated with computing, things like network traffic, proxies, wireless logs, things like that. But it doesn't have to be. It can be accident reports in a city to see which intersection is the most dangerous in your community. That's another way you can do it. So Splunk doesn't really care about what the data is. It just looks through the data and pulls that information from it. I do want to point out down here the Tech Validate site. And down here this is a non-Splunk site that has use cases of various types. So it could be an education, it could be a retail, it could be a government site. It has a bunch of case studies as to how they use Splunk and what they got what their experience was with it. If it was good, if it solved their problem. I like to use the Tech Validate because it's not Splunk. Splunk is not directly associated with it, or not associated with it at all. And so these are reasonably free of Splunk influence as far as the corporation goes. So it's a good place to find other people that have done things similar to you and to prove that it is a valid tool for what you want to do. So if you're trying to trying to look towards using Splunk, that would be a good place to go to build a case for it. So I'm going to start out and talk a little bit about the Splunk architecture, not a whole bit, a whole lot, but I'd like to at least let you have an understanding of all the pieces of Splunk and kind of how they're put together. It's kind of a Lego kit, so I want to let you know what you can build with it and what makes sense. It's always something different at various sites because, frankly, every site's network topology is different, and they're looking at a little different slice of data a lot of times. So you have three main Splunk server functions. You've got searching and reporting, you've got a search head for searching and reporting, you've got an indexer, and you've got a forwarder. Those are the three different pieces. These actually can all be on one machine. They're different roles, basically, different server functions that can be split out, but if you want to run it all on one laptop, you can. But in a large system, typically they're broken out. So the search head mainly manages the users and the web browser side of things and kicks off the searches. It pushes the searches down to the indexer or indexers. You can have multiple indexers. And that's the indexer is the real workhorse of the environment. The indexer itself is what takes the information, breaks it into events, and writes it to disk, and it's also the component of the architecture that runs the individual searches. So it will run the search and send the search back up to the search head. So if you have a distributed environment, you're basically, if you have 10 indexers with that environment, each indexer is working on its own slice of data in parallel. So you get a lot of parallel processing when you're working with Splunk. The forwarder itself is for data collection. It's kind of a different color in here. And the idea for that is that the indexer and the search head typically are the same binary, that you just configure it to be one or the other. Where a forwarder itself, there's a component called a universal forwarder. It's basically an agent you put on to a production system that can collect data. We'll talk a little bit about data collection here in a bit, but this is a way of putting a lightweight agent on a production system that will then pick up the data and move it off over to an indexer that then does all the heavy lifting. So that's why it's a little different color. Okay. Splunk install can be one or all of the roles. So an indexer can collect information if you wanted to, so can a search head. So it's just how you configure it. So you can go from a single server environment, which I use to go out on sites for demos, for pre-sales type demos. It works great for that, proof of concepts, things like that. But it doesn't particularly work very well for a lot of data. It's just too much for a single machine to kind of handle, get all the pieces put together. So typically it is broken up into multiple servers. So you'll have one or more search heads. So we've got those up here, the search heads on the top, which the users actually log into. Those will then send the searches down to a bank of indexers, which may or may not be in one site. They can be on different data sites if you want, or they can be in one particular data center, or it depends on how you want to architect it. Then the actual data collection typically is done via the forwarders, the agents on the other boxes. I can get it to highlight what I want. There we go. So it's typically on the forwarders, and then the forwarders then move that data into the indexes. And they typically will load balance across them, so you're able to have a stripe of data on each of your indexers, and that allows, if one indexer is down, the data collection continues. It just moves on to the next indexer, and so it will continue to pick up the data even if an indexer happens to go down. So it's got a little bit of data collection redundancy in that sense. Okay, so I wonder, do I have another? I don't have another one. It gets much more complicated than this as well. You might have this particular tree of servers in 5 data centers, and then have a search head that looks over all of them. So there's a lot of different ways you can put these things together, and it just depends on what your requirements are from a business as to what you need to build and how you need to put it together. So it's not all we're going to say about the architecture side of things. There's a lot of information down there. There's a week-long class, 4 hours a day for 5 days you can take about just Splunk architecture if you wanted to take the official Splunk class for that. So we've got a lot of material. So some people ask about operating systems. What does Splunk run on? Splunk runs on lots of Unix variants. There's actually a link at the bottom that has some of the system requirements and things for looking at at a Splunk install, but it works on Linux, various flavors of Linux. It works on Windows, Solaris, Spark, that type of thing. All of the communication, by the way, between the Splunk servers happens through network protocols. So you can have heterogeneous systems. I always like to have my indexers all exactly the same, but your forwarders are usually installed on whatever system is out there, whatever production system is there, which may be a Windows Active Directory type application or server, and then you may have Linux-style servers as well. And so you definitely need to be able to mix data from various platforms, and Splunk has no problem with that. Just as a convenience, all the binaries have identical disk structure, so it doesn't matter if you're using Windows or Linux. It goes on the same way. The command line is exactly the same, so they make them very symmetrical across the different systems. The big difference between a Windows binary and a Unix-style binary is it has a couple of extra input types in there that deal with the registry and event logs. So it pulls those in as well, and you can configure that to pick up whatever pieces, whatever counters you want on the Windows side, and performance information. So it's got a little difference. Since those are binary formats, but they're things that are needed quite often, the Windows binary actually caters to those. All right. So this is hands-on. We do have our server out there. The server is at http://bootcamp.gtritraining.com. I encourage you to log into that to be able to look at things as we go along. The labs actually have information in them as well. One thing I would caution you is if you want to play with the labs and get ahead with the labs, that's fine, but there are a couple of things that I have to kick off on my side, a couple of situations we're going to create that won't be valid until I actually get to that spot. So if you work ahead, note that you're not going to see the behavior that you would if you waited until we got there. So the idea is that we've got a lab server. A couple of things are going to go wrong with the lab server. We're going to investigate it and try to figure out how those work and build a little dashboard of our own so that we can monitor them in the future. So that's kind of the pattern we're going to use. So there's that logins.pdf that was out there. We're going to go and look at the lab, the first lab, and the first lab honestly is pretty much a connectivity lab. We're trying to make sure that everyone is able to get into the server and that we're able to get all the connectivity up and running as far as that goes. There are, by the way, we do have the well, the Splunk does have a certain set of browsers that are supported. So hopefully you're running one of those browsers. It's not too restrictive, but if you're running a real old browser, you may have actually some issues trying to get some of this stuff to work the way you want it to. But hopefully we're doing okay. Here's the actual first lab. So we're going to just try to go in. We're going to try to connect. We're going to use our username and password that's supplied in the login document. What else? Then we are going to change our time zone and password. And that's about all we're really going to do at that point. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to try to get that connected. If you have questions, feel free to put them up in chat. But I'm going to kind of put us on mute for about 5 minutes. It's about half past the hour. And so it would be about 35 past the hour that we would start back up again. So try to connect up and let me know. If you can, go ahead and I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. If you can put a green check mark up next to your name if you're done, that'll help me understand how people are connecting and if you have problems. So feel free to do that, and we will start up again here at about 35 after the hour. I'll put myself on mute, and so you don't have to listen to me type. looks like several of you found your way to the green check mark. If you hadn't found a way to get there, if you look in the participants dialog on WebEx in the upper left or upper right-hand side, rather, there's a little feedback icon. It's got kind of a, it's like, I don't know how to describe it. There's a little hand and an exclamation point, and it's the one in the middle. And you may not even see the exclamation point, but there's a little yes and no icon underneath there. The idea that you can give me a green check mark that says yes, basically, to let me know when you're good to go on. I've kind of got what I need. I can see that most people have been able to log in. If you're having a particular problem logging in or want to or need some help there, go ahead. And Abraham, I refer to him as Avi, but Abraham is out there that can help you, and Chris Greenwood could help you as well. Connect if that's an issue. I think people are getting in. I don't think that's a problem, so we're going to go ahead and move on. Go ahead and feel free to play with the lab and or play with the lab environment, and maybe even walk along with me if you want as we go through and look at the environment. Okay, so I'm going to move on. Avi, since you're the host, I don't have the clear the check mark box. If you could clear those check marks off, that would help me kind of keep track of things. In the meantime, we'll move on, and I will move to the next slide. So the big thing with Splunk is you need to understand what data you're trying to collect and understand what problem you're trying to solve. I will go onto a site sometimes, and people will say, I just want to collect all of my X data, and that's fine, but it's not very directed. And one of the things is that if you want to succeed in bringing Splunk in, one of my recommendations is have a specific problem you're trying to solve. A lot of times that's not an issue because you're actually bringing in Splunk to solve a specific issue anyway, something like either a compliance use case that you definitely have things set up by an auditor for you. Sometimes it's security, sometimes it's just visibility. But the idea is that you want to bring in the data that's going to solve your problem. Splunk does not manufacture data. Splunk gathers the data that's out there, and you have to, and you can interpret it however you need to. If the data is not there, Splunk cannot help you. So you want to get the information that you're actually trying to solve. So that will actually help you solve the problem. So the question to ask is, first of all, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Where is that information? Is that information on disk? Is that a syslog feed? Is that somewhere out in cyberspace? Maybe you want a Twitter feed. How are you going to get the data in? How long do you want that data to be searchable on your system? Is there visibility limitations you have? Is there personally identifiable information that you might need to mask out or that you may need to limit the access of users to? And do you need to archive data, and what type of strategy do you want for that? So some of those questions are very relevant to pulling data in when you're starting a Splunk system. So where is your data? Splunk is really good at, it was originally designed for pulling in log files. So anything that's in a log file, it's really easy to pull it in. As long as it's text, as long as it's human readable text, Splunk can pull it in and ingest that data. So that's pretty easy. You just point Splunk at it and it pulls it in. There are custom applications that may have log files as well. There are web servers that have log files. You might have a social platform, user clickstream social platform, something like Twitter. You can use a Twitter feed to pull things in. You can actually Splunk configuration files to see if they've changed. You can query. I'm not going to read through all of these, but have network devices on syslog. You have databases you can pull things in. Metrics for performance things. You've got all sorts of other things you can pull in. So you have to figure out what problem you're trying to solve, and then where does that data reside? It can reside on disk. It can be on a wire. You can collect it via a program if you need to, and feed it into Splunk. So there's all sorts of ways you can get data into Splunk. As long as the data can be rendered in human-readable text, Splunk can consume that, and you can pull it in. So different types of input. You have files and directories. We're kind of talking about that. If you have an admin login, this is kind of what the GUI looks like. They have the data area. In fact, let me just go to my other other screen. Let me share out my screen here and show you. Since I have an admin login, I can't give you guys admin logins because someone out there would mess up my system. So so you all have power user logins, and that you won't be able to see some of these pieces of information. So this is the looking at the other lab. So I need to go back and look at my Splunk install over here. Okay, so there's a Splunk install. It's kind of where we left it last. If I go to the settings dialog, you can see up here it drops down a. Come on. First of all, let me stop this because that's a 30-second window running constantly. It takes quite a bit of CPU. So I'm going to go ahead and run that as a historical search, and then I will just go and take a look here at the settings dialog. And it's being a bit slow for me here. Why is it not? Drop that one down. Drop that one down and that one down. But it doesn't want to drop down settings. Okay, let me just refresh the screen and see if the JavaScript got messed up somehow in there. And again, there we go. All right, a little work there. All right, so this is the settings dialog. My screenshot actually in the slides is a little bit old. It has the same categories, but it has a little different look and feel. So if you look under the data inputs, and I look under data inputs, and I can see all of my files and directories, all the TCP, UDP, all of the ways you can get data in. And in this case, we look at some of the Windows event logs and things of that nature. So that's kind of where we're looking at in the GUI. And we'll go back and find where I am in the slides over here. That's not where we were. Where? There it is. So files and directories, we can bring in things from network inputs. You can listen to a port. If you want to port something to a port, you can actually just listen on that port, pull the data in. You can run a script. So that's a lot of the performance data that Splunk ends up collecting for things like Unix platforms are run on scripts. So you have maybe a top command or a PS command. Those of you who are familiar with those commands, you can capture that output and ingest it into Splunk. So instead of having a snapshot, basically, of time that PS, that process data, is applicable, you can aggregate those and collect those over time, and then you can have a history of what happened on the machine. So it's a way of pulling data in. Again, Windows inputs, and then you can look at file system change monitoring. So if you wanted to look at who changed what files, there's ways of doing that as well. All right, am I going to go too far down that path because we only have so much time? So this actually will get us into the first substantial lab. We're going to just look at exploring just the general Splunk interface and kind of how it works. I'm going to look at the lab doc here real quick over here. So this is the doc that you should have downloaded from the file transfer download in the WebEx. We're going to go to the app search and reporting. Then we're going to look at a certain area in there, click on the summary button. Then we're going to look at some of the data that's in there, and then we're going to run a keyword search. And I think, yeah, we're going to look for error, and then we're going to look for eventually fail star, and then we're going to end up looking for some real-time data. So it has 9 steps to it. There's a little challenge task at the end if you want to pick that up and look at it. If you have time to, that's up to you. That's just kind of bonus for those of you who finish early. So those 9 steps there is what we're looking at doing. Just to get you started off on the right foot, I'll go over and look at, I'm going to go over to where you're probably at when you logged in. This area right here. So I'm going to go search for reporting. We're going to click on this button over here. And then we're going to look at the data summary by looking at the button here in the middle. So, and that'll pop up a window, and then I'm going to let you go ahead and go through the lab for yourself. I just kind of wanted to make sure that everyone got started on the right foot, and that we were good to go with some of that. So again, I'm going to put myself on mute here. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to step through that. And if you have any questions, again, let me know via chat, and we'll see if we can solve any of those. It's about 4:45, so I would say at about 5 till we will get back up. So hopefully you're able to get in and take a look at a little bit of that data. We're going to actually review a bit of that. It takes a bit of a learning curve sometimes to figure out where you're at. So we're going to walk through a bit of that. Let me share out my screen again. And desktop. There we go. So we're going to review this lab just a little bit and look at the search application and look at some of the keyword searches and kind of what we're looking at in that application itself. So I'm going to move this window out of the way and head over to my browser again over here. So, and some of this will be in the slides, by the way, if you have the slide deck. I'm going to talk through the next couple of slides and not actually show them, but they will be there for future reference. So hopefully you'll be able to look back at that and that will make sense to you in the future. So let's see. Open another dialog here. I have a problem every once in a while. I'll start talking on mute, so I want to make sure that I'm coming across. Looks like I'm doing okay. As long as the microphone in WebEx is giving me little sound things, that means I'm doing all right. All right. So the first thing we kind of looked at is we looked at doing a kind of a keyword search. So I'm going to start off by saying all time is a very bad thing for it to default to. Splunk default to that just to make sure people are successful the first time they go through. That's configurable. You don't have to make it be all time. One of the first things I do is in the uiprefs.conf file, I will go out there and change it to be at least something like today rather than all time, so it defaults to something a little smaller. If you have, a license file that's or a license that's pulling in 100 gigabytes a day, and if you've been running it for 6 years, there's going to be a lot of data out there, and all time would not be a good thing to search over. For our lab server, it's only been up for about a day, and so there's not that much information on there. While I'm talking about it, I hadn't mentioned this before, but licensing with Splunk is strictly the amount of data you pull in a day. It doesn't matter how many Splunk machines or machines that are running Splunk software are in your environment. That's irrelevant. You could have one, you could have 60. You're not paying a fee to Splunk for that. The only thing you're paying Splunk for is actually the amount you license a day. You can keep it as long as you want. As many people can look at it as you want. It's just strictly how much is indexed a day. So that's the licensing model. So I'm going to change this over to be something like the last 15 minutes or so. And I'm going to do the search for error. So I'm looking at through all the data that's coming in the last 15 minutes, and there's only one spot, it looks like, that has the word error in it. And that's right here. So I just searched through all of my data, all the sources, all the data that's coming in the last 15 minutes, and I'm able to pull out. So this is a keyword search. It's a lot like Google for data. So you can use wildcards. With the example was to use fail star. So in this case, fail star will match fail, will match fails, will match failure, will match anything that's got fail on there. Note that this is actually not case sensitive. So if I did fail all caps, it will show me the same group. So you can make it case sensitive if you want to. There's a lot of things you can do in the search language. Case, fail, star. That made it case sensitive, and it will not find anything because nothing has an all caps fail in there. So I just wanted to point out that you can make it case sensitive if you want, but you don't have to. The default is not to be case sensitive. So this looks for everything that says fail. I'm going to widen this out because there's not many events coming in. So I'm going to go to the last 4 hours. Give us a little bigger sample set. There's lots of fails now. And you can see in here it highlights the keywords that you're looking for. So what if I said I wanted to be, let's see, what's something that's, also have the word DNS in there. I can put DNS up there. So now it look for anything that has fail and DNS in it. So you can see this only returns, in this case, it's listed up here, 6 events that have failed and DNS in there. The implied combination of this is and I can explicitly say it by going A-N-D, you can type it correctly. It does need to be in all caps if you're doing a Boolean. So that's exactly the same search. There are other things you can do, which could be or, and this would be everything that has failed or DNS. And you can see now we have 3,900 events, 3,904 events. So we have a lot more events that way because we're having anything that has DNS or fail star in it. So different ways you can combine things. If you wanted to say fail and password. See if I got any of those in there. Yeah, there's a number of failed passwords that are coming in from, in this case, it's coming in, let's see, from our Bootcamp server, as far as that goes. So, but you can look for all the failed passwords. Now, if you want it to be a literal string that has a space in it, I wanted to say, what's a good thing over here? Let's widen this a little bit. Just saying fail, let's just say fail star. I don't want to get into too many details here, but you can use or you can use a not in there. You can use an and. You can also use the GUI to do some of this. So if I remove this completely and I just click on connection down here, I can add it to the search. So now I have, of course, the previous search was fail, so I pick that up. So it's going to look for all failed and connections. I can actually click on it again, and I can remove it from the search. So if you don't want to type it, and sometimes if you have like a session ID in there that's very long, you don't want to type it. I want to see if I won't put that in there yet. You can do it that way. Now that it's kind of keeping track of, if I type just an F, it's keeping track of what I did. Failed password, failed. So you can kind of look at your history and select what you wanted if it was already there. So it does look ahead for you a little bit. And it makes other guesses of where that data may be in. It's better the longer you put it in. There are 11 fails, this many fails, and if I want to say failure, I can click on that one. So so you can use the GUI to your advantage as well, rather than just actually type it in up there. So so that's the first step. So we can filter things. So in here is our individual events. So everything down here are actually the raw events, the text that is actually in your log files or coming across the wire or however you're collecting your data, the result of scripts perhaps. That's all right here. These are the events in here. Each event itself has different fields that are pulled out of it. There are some default fields that exist for everything, and those are what appear as, some of those, I'll be accurate, some of those appear as your selected fields. So like the host for this particular event, the source, the host would be the machine it came from, the source would be, in this case, the file it came from, and the source type, we'll look at it in just a minute, but it's kind of the log file format. So it's kind of how the layout of that particular entry or that particular file. So Splunk uses source types quite extensively, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, a little more in detail. You can see what it pulled out of this particular event by clicking this little arrow. So you can see down here, now you can see the host was this, the source type, but also pulled out things called action. The action itself is called a failure, so it looked at here, pulled out the failure. The app that it was running was SSHD, and you can see that because key value pairs, in this case, well, not in this one, SSHD is pulled out from here. TTY is SSH, so down here you can see TTY, SSH. So this is what is pulled out in this specific event. So you can look at how the data that it's actually pulling out and making available to you in a particular event. The set of things that have been pulled out of all of the events are over here in what's called the field sidebar. So there's only one action in this. This is failure for all of those, and that makes sense because up here we filtered by failure. So there's only one action. You can look at a bunch of things about it, about this data as a set over here. And this is not a particularly interesting set of data. So I'm going to put in source type. I think I spelled that wrong. Yeah, I need an R. S-O-U-R-C, source type. You have to spell things right in order for them to work. Equals access combined. Note that it's looking ahead for me. So it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, access combined. That's what I want. In this case, since access combined does not actually have an embedded space, the quotes around access combined are optional. You wouldn't necessarily have to have the quotes in there. So access combined, you can see I'm getting it from 3 different Apache hosts coming in there in the set in the last 4 hours. The different actions are add to cart, purchase, change quantity, view, and remove. So that's a summary of all of the fields that are pulled out of each individual event. It's a summary of all of the events coming in. So you can kind of look over them as a whole by using the field sidebar. The different session IDs down here. The category called price. So product names. So there's a bunch of things that are getting pulled out in this data that you can now look over and use to filter your searches by. All right, let me see. I'm getting a little in the weeds. I don't want to get too deep into stuff. So again, the fields themselves are pieces of data that are pulled out. So these are the fields that are pulled out for this particular event. In this case, we've got like a status down here of 200. That means it was it pulled up the file just fine. It starts, you're probably familiar with 503s or 404s, page not found and server errors. Those pop up in your browser pretty frequently. But this is the status of when everything's good. So, so this particular event, it was good. We can look over here in our field sidebar to see things that are what all the statuses were. We've got, well, you've got good, but you also have server errors and you have page not found. You want to see all the page not founds? I can click on it. Click on the 404 up here. Now status, so we're looking at access combined and status equals 404. So every one of these is a page not found. And you can actually look at the IP it came from, the request came from, but you can also look at, where'd it go? Status type, URI. So this is what it was looking for when it couldn't find it. So various things, URI path. So there's various things you can see how you can build a dashboard off of all that. You can drill in and figure out what's going on inside of your data. If you've ever had to write scripts or look through log data without using a GUI or without using a tool, you'll understand just how nice this is. We're kind of spoiled to be able to use tools like this. Back in the day, you actually had to do greps and search through it on your own. So, all right. So then we have the idea, the concept of the source type. In this case, I've filtered it to be one particular source type. So let's not do that. Let's just look at all the data in the last 4 hours, and look at all the source types I've got. So I've got 12 different source types coming in. So I got everything from access combined, which is your web server type logs. You've got the Cisco ESA, that's email information. You've got your Squid proxy information. All of this is kind of a log file format, and Splunk will pull out fields associated with that data in conjunction with what log file format it is. It knows that inside of an access combined, for example, we'll go back to those, that if you look down the event at a certain portion in the event, there's a number. In this case, the number is 503. That's your HTTP status. It happens to know that because every log file line that gets put out there, that's the pattern it uses. So a source type is really how it looks into an event and pulls out individual fields. Note it doesn't say status equals 503. Yet down here, when we look at the event itself, we'll see that the status down here is 503. It knows that. That's intelligence is kind of built into the source type. So Splunk pulls out fields according to source types, and it knows a lot of source types just right up front. And I'll pull my other screen back over here, and this is kind of where we are in the slides. I wanted to point out down here at the bottom, there's a link of all the pre-trained source types that Splunk has. So if you want to go out there and look at the pre-trained source types, you can do that. So a lot of them are pre-trained. You can create additional ones as you need to. So if you have an application log, you'll probably need to make your own source type. There's actually a structure out there called the Common Information Model, or CIM, and it defines what fields should exist for particular types of source types. So you might want to take a look into that. If you make your data CIM compliant, if you're doing a source type of your own, then it will be useful in a lot of different contexts. So there is it's kind of a schema for if you have network traffic, it needs to look a certain way in order to play nicely with all the applications that are out there. All right, so we have an environment here. We've got I'm going to run you through a little demo that a call comes in and says we've got some purchasing problems going on, and so we're going to go through and look at how you would actually debug that. Actually debug that type of scenario, and just the process for going and doing that. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to bring up our browser here. So a call comes in about users not being able to make a purchase. These are web users not being able to make a purchase. The lab environment has a multi-tier implementation, so you're looking at not only just the web servers, but you're looking at the database tier and the different Apache logs as well, so we're looking at various things. So let's start at the top, look at the web experience, and try to drill down into it and figure out what's going on in the data here. All right, can bring up my browser. There we go. So first off, conveniently, we are looking at web traffic. So I'm going to look at the source type access combined because I know all of my web traffic are the Apache logs, and they will have that source type. So we're going to look at the Apache or the access combined. We're going to look for all of the places where the action was a purchase. They're having a problem doing a purchase. So I'm going to action equals purchase. So I'm going to look at the action equals purchase down there. So those are all the. So now we have 4,437 action equals purchases. I want to look at the ones that are having problems. They're having server errors. So I know in my data that those are the 503s. Those are where there's actually a server error. And I click on that. So I could have typed all this, by the way, up in this line myself if I knew exactly what I wanted. But in this case, we will just use the GUI to do it, and let it do the typing for me. So let's take a look at what we're looking at here. The various hosts. There are 3 hosts that are coming in. It looks like the server errors are happening on all of the hosts. And they're roughly, 33, 33, 32%. They're roughly balanced across those. So it doesn't look like it's a problem with any of my individual Apache servers. It looks like it's something deeper in the infrastructure. So instead of looking at that, let's look at the WebSphere tier. That's a little bit lower down the chain. So we're kind of saying it's probably not an Apache problem. So let's go down and look at a different source type, a different type of data. The type of data we're going to look at is actually the WebSphere. Note that it recognized it. So the WebSphere log. We're going to look at those, and let's take a look over the last 4 hours. Those. So there's a bunch of data coming in on that source type. We need to look for where there's a particular problem. So I'm going to look for the keyword exception. So I type an exception up there. This is everywhere we're having an exception. There's a lot of them. You can see there's 742 in this particular time frame. And that's just, it's a lot to look through. I'd rather not look through it. And so I look at my actual events. And a lot of these have to do with policies. It's like, get policy, that's not going to be my problem. This is just, this may be a problem somewhere else, but this is not the problem they're having on their server right now. So let's do this. Let's say, let's say we don't want it to be a get policy. So I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to say exclude this from my search. So up here you say, okay, that's fine. We're going to do the source type of this. Look for all the exceptions, but look for the ones that are not get policy. So we filtered all those out. Now we're down to 22 events. This is something I can manage. So I can actually look through this and see what's going on. So in this case, I see SQL state. There's a problem. JDBC in here. Down here, the exception. Everything seems to be associated with JDBC and different database stuff. So I said, okay, that's fine, and I'm getting errors on my web tier with the database. Let's go look at the database logs and see what's going on in the database logs. So I know that my source type, again, all the data associated with the database is under MySQL source type. So I'm just going to select that over the last 4 hours. Take a look at all the events that happen in that sense. And we will start looking at this, and the first one I see is shutdown complete. That didn't sound like a good thing. Start looking. Now note that these are in reverse chronological order, so this is the most recent one. So we want to look backwards in the log. We keep going down, and here's what's the one that really calls to me right now is disk is full, retrying, waiting for free space. So we've kind of dug through a scenario that says I'm having trouble doing purchases. And now we know it's because the disk is full on a particular server. In this case, we're looking at the MySQL Splunk.com. The actual file was MySQL log. And so we know what to go look for and what to fix. So that's an example of kind of drilling into your data in a raw data sense as to troubleshooting a problem and getting down to exactly what the issue was. So I wanted to walk you through kind of how that would happen, how they would do it. That will bring us up to our next lab where you'll do a little bit of that on your own. Just a minute ago, I kicked off the condition that created an error in your environment in the lab. So if we go and go back to our slides here. So this is going to take a little longer. It's more like a 15-minute investigation. So calls have come in reporting a user having difficulty connecting to a particular web application. So there's the lab review. I thought I had another slide in there. Apparently I don't. So let's go and look at how we would troubleshoot that. And to do that, we have our lab doc over here. It's a little bit small. I apologize for that. I'll make it a little bigger. And so we got about 15 minutes to do that. It's about 12:15. I'm going to let you turn you loose on that, and we're going to run out of time here a little bit. So I'm going to definitely pick up right at 15 after and run through the rest of the material. But I talk too much. I always do. This will give us some context of what's happening and how you would troubleshoot that. All right. So the quarter after, I'm going to pick up at 1/2 past. And we will go through the last lab at that point. as you're finishing that up or heading the last couple of minutes here, I just wanted to point out that the lab will be open later on until basically midnight Eastern time tonight. So if you want to play with this later, I understand that some people won't have time to finish all the steps, and that's the way it goes sometimes. But we definitely want to give you the chance to finish that up after hours or after we're done here, if you so desire. Just give you the opportunity to do that. Just a lot of material, and I have a hard time compressing it into the right amount of time. I'm going to go ahead and share out my desktop again. A little bit before time, not much though. I'm going to make sure we get through the lecture portion, and you can come back and play with the labs more if you so desire. All right, so what I have up on my screen, what I'm sharing right now, is kind of a review of how that lab was supposed to go. Hopefully it went something like this for you. You start out with looking for a search for concur star, and then you end up looking at the statuses and doing a top values by time, and you see something happen right in the middle. That everything, all of a sudden, things were going just fine. Everything was 200s, and all of a sudden everything stopped being 200s and started being 404s, page not found. So you can see the access was lost at that point in time, literally right there. And that's kind of like that's why I like to trigger it during class so we can see when it happens. Okay. Then after that, you could look at the remedy data and see that there was a ticket. Grumpy at demo.com had a change in the firewall object. They removed a target change property was to remove a rule. So there was obviously a rule in there that was opening that particular port or that site, and they removed it. If you wanted to go over and look at the source type Cisco ASA, look at the firewall data itself, you can see and look at the firewall connections denied over time. In this case, we're looking at the connection denied string, the phrase of that, and we build a time chart of it, of the counts of connection denied. You can see at that point in time, all the connection denieds went up. So all the data from various sources all kind of corroborate to say there was a change made that made people stop having access. So that's kind of what the lab is angling for and what we're looking to show in there. So you also got a little bit of a flavor for building time charts and things like that. So that's kind of good. It's a way of displaying things much easier. Let's look a little bit about automating things a bit. So we have a couple of different searches we used. The question then would be, once you develop a search, you don't want it to go away, so you can use the save as to actually save it as either a report, an alert, or a dashboard panel. It's kind of interesting that these are in a different order. I'll have to fix that slide. So a report is just a saved search, basically. An alert is a saved search that is run on a schedule and has an action associated with it. So so at that point, depending on what the result of the search was, you may send out emails, you may fire off a script, or you can add it to a dashboard panel and make it part of a kind of I hate to use the phrase, but single pane of glass type thing. You can combine all the searches you want in one view in order to look into those. So in this case, if we want to save it as a report, you can do that. You give it a title. You can optionally put a time range picker on it. And then at that point, you can go and from the search and reporting app, you can look under the reports section and see your particular, in this case, it was connection denied, 60 minutes. You can see your actual report there. You can also get it to the settings link for those of you, I'm not going to go into that right now, but there's another way to get there as well. So alerting. So anything that you can search on, you can alert upon. So the actions that can happen, you can list it in a list of triggered alerts inside of Splunk itself. You got to send an email out to a group or a single user or a bunch of users. That email, by the way, can contain the results of the search. It can contain the name of the search. It can contain a bunch of meta information. And it can be conditional in the sense that if the number of returned results went up 10%, send an alert. So you can do things like that. Or the number of maybe 503s is above a certain threshold. So you can do conditional alerts as well. You can also run a custom action via a script, so you can have it take automatic actions, like perhaps you're searching for disk space as greater than 80%, and for every event that's returned, you do that scheduled search, you maybe do it once a day. Maybe it needs to add an entry into a ticketing system, a workflow system, and say, hey, we need to remediate this. And so that's one thing it can do as well. But that happens via a script. A little bit of the flow as creating an alert. So you do save as alert back from you have your search, and you do save as alert as opposed to just save as a report. You get the title. You have to schedule it. Typically, it's a scheduled search. It's typically not a real-time search. I'll just throw out there right now that real-time searches continuously run and are expensive. They take a lot of resources. So a lot of times you'd rather schedule it maybe once an hour or maybe once every minute as opposed to trying to run it real time. This one is actually going to be run every week, Monday at 6, and then the number of it's going to trigger it if the number of results are greater than 0 in this case. There's a lot of options there. I'll let you go through that GUI and play with the options. The schedule itself, for those of you who know what a cron schedule is, can be a cron schedule, so you don't necessarily have to just have this GUI to constrain you as to how you can schedule it. You can schedule on a cron schedule, which is very flexible. Then step 2, your actual action, and when it's triggered, different options to do. I'm not going to go into what all those mean, but there's a lot of options that you can have happen once that alert goes off. So searches, reports and alerts are actually the same object, just that a report is just it has a search string. A scheduled report has a search string and a schedule, and an alert has a search string, a schedule, and an action defined. So they're all, and this is where I was alluding to earlier, if you wanted to go to settings up here, searches and reports, that's where they live, over there. You can also get to them via the GUI where we were talking about with the reports and the search GUI. So if you wanted to, the other action we had was to save it as a dashboard panel, and that goes through this particular flow. And we're going to do this in the next lab. So we're going to create a new dashboard. We're going to give it a title. We're going to add a panel to that dashboard of the search that you're using, and then we're going to save it off. So it's very easy to create a dashboard. Once you have a dashboard, you can edit it. You can edit everything about it. There's nothing sacred about that. You can change everything, change the search you do, change the visualization, change all the pieces to it. And that's kind of what this is kind of alluding to. Modify the search by that one. You can modify the rendering of it, a line chart or a bar chart or whatever makes sense. And then you can modify the labeling. In this case, it says connection denied. You can also modify the X and Y axes, and if it has a legend and where it goes. So there's a lot of pieces you can play with when you put together the dashboard. Okay, so that puts us up to Lab 4, but I'm not quite ready for Lab 4 yet because I've got to trigger the condition. All right, condition is triggered. So at this point, users are now reporting that internet applications have gotten sluggish. Likely cause is network bandwidth, and so we're going to look at how to deal with that. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes or so. This is going to take longer than 10 minutes to do, but we only have about 20 minutes left. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to work on it, and then we'll come back and I will finish up the materials, and then you can finish up the lab as you see fit after that. I'll definitely be on the line for at least a half hour after the session closes, so you can ask questions and things at that point if you want as well. So 10 minutes or so, I will come back. I do not expect you to have finished it in those 10 minutes, but it'll give you a start, and we can kind of talk to it and look at look at a little bit more information, look at the apps just a bit, and we will wrap it up, and you can work on the lab as you need to. So it's 38. I'm going to go with 48. Take all the time I can get. Zoom at 48. All right, since we're running out of some time, I did want to show you a little bit of how that lab is supposed to leave you and what you're supposed to build with that. Eventually, you get this, when you finish up the lab, you would have a chart that looks a lot like this. So you've got in the upper left over here a case where the bandwidth at one point was doing okay, and all of a sudden the DirecTV bandwidth jumped all the way up to a huge amount, and ostensibly because of a sporting event. And then the other over here, you can see where the not found, the yellow line here, jumped up right in this area right in here when we got the firewall block. So you can see this jumped up, and you can see that this jumped up at that time, and then we had all the failure messages down here. So you can build up your own dashboards fairly simply in order to show the cases that you're interested in and things how you want to monitor your particular system. So that's kind of where that is angling for. Let me finish up the slides, and then you can come back and work on this. If you're interested in being able to recreate this, you can do that as we finish up. All right, so slides over here. Apps. We wanted to make a quick discussion about applications. So from the Splunk website, apps are a self-service, out-of-the-box extension for Splunk. Apps serve as workspaces for tailored configuration and for tailored configuration or display. So an app itself is basically no more than what you've been doing in the labs here. An app is a way of bundling together a lot of searches and displays in order to put together things that someone assumes that you are interested in. And a lot of times that's true. Just a fancy version of the dashboards you created in the lab. Apps may have a user interface that you can pull down. They may just pull up an app may just pull in various data sources as well. There are different knowledge objects. There could be saved reports for alerts and custom designed views and dashboards. So they're collections of things. Most of the apps are free with Splunk. You can go out to apps.splunk.com and pick them up and work with them. There's a couple of exceptions. There's enterprise security, VMware, PCI, Exchange. All of those are for fee models, and there may be one more at this point. I think there is, but I can't think of it is right offhand. So those are all for fee, but the rest of the 500 of them out there or so are free. And they give you, honestly, they give you a really good step up in things. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work to get them to do what you want them to do as opposed to what the creator expected or thought was important. But all apps pretty much are text. And if you don't like the search it runs, you can actually change it. So you can take it and modify it to do what you need it to do. The repository is at apps.splunk.com. You can go out there and download it. The Cisco Security Suite app is actually installed on our server here. So if you wanted to see what that does, that's what I kind of demoed at the beginning. So it's just a collection of dashboards. Looking up IP addresses is one thing it does, and plots them on a map, and it has a lot of visualizations for various Cisco appliances. So that's what that app is doing. I'm not going to go through this demo because we don't really have time, so I'm going to go ahead and skip this slide. But this is another one of looking at another drill down I could look at for another problem. But we do not have time to do that. In this case, we would be looking at database metrics and noting that the queue value, queue size in the database was changed, and so it caused a problem. So just another use case you can jump through and understand. So the data that we were working with today to build our dashboards, it's kind of interesting. I can and I'll do this. I'll go ahead and let me go back to my chart here. I'm gonna rerun this, refresh it, so it picks up a new set of data, so we can see what it looks like right now. Eventually. Here it comes. Note that the line now is all the way across because this is only 15 minutes, so it's been at high volume for over 15 minutes. You see this has dropped as well. So let me fix the scenarios that we had before, and and see what our dashboard tells us after a while. So you can see that the yellow is high, and we can see that the DirecTV is way high. So let me refresh it again and see what's going on now that we've implemented a fix for things. Well, you can see that this is dropping back down. And it's hard to tell, but this is going to drop back down as well. So the dashboard that we actually create is actually useful. So you can see how to use it, how it would be useful in the future. If this happened again, something like this happened again, that network traffic jumped up, you can actually see it on a dashboard. I'll hit, let's see, go back to, this is, after a little more time passes, you can see that the yellow goes down and that the network traffic drops off as well. I'll refresh it here again in a minute, and we'll see what it looks like. But this is kind of what we looked at. We looked at kind of the overview of Splunk, kind of an architecture of Splunk, a little bit about how data collection has gone about it, discovering things in Splunk by looking at fields and doing searches, and then kind of automating things by building dashboards. And a really quick look at the Splunk apps area as well. So again, this is the same link I had before about case studies of Splunk and Tech Validate. Just put it in there again so that if you're interested, you can look that up and take a look at some of other people's use cases and how they fared with it, whether it was good, bad, if it was worthwhile or not. So that's a resource available to you. And that will pretty much get us out of our webinar today. What I will do is I'm going to go back to my screen here. I'm going to refresh it again and validate that yes, things are tapering off. See, the traffic is definitely tapering off. This is staying down. So everything returned to normal, and our dashboards reflect that. I am going to turn those back on, and because if people are wanting to work on the dashboard later, after class or after we're done talking, after the webinar, I want those to be up and active so that so you can build the dashboard you think should be there. So I just turned it back on and created the problems again. So if I do a refresh here, I can validate that is coming back. There we go. It's coming back up. Sometimes Splunk will actually tail off at the end because it hasn't got enough data for that particular minute that it's displaying. So that's why that drops back down. So if we do another refresh, you'll see that it may drop down again, but it will be further down the pipe. There we go. So you can see it's back up and running. And you can see this is coming back up as well. So, our dashboard is reactive to the environment and is doing exactly what we want our dashboard to do. So I'd like to just wrap up with the comments. Avi, do you want to jump back on for a little bit of summary, or do you want me to go ahead and do that? It doesn't matter to me.
Sure, Scott. So, okay. Yes, we want to thank you all for attending, and I just want to reiterate the reason why GTRI is presenting this free workshop to you is because we do this for a living. We provide these services, but we believe that once people have been introduced to Splunk and see its value and see its utility, that they will want to use it in increasingly wider range of tasks within their enterprises. And they know they can come to us for help if they need licensing, for example. And the way Splunk works, just to let you know, is that it's the amount of data that is sent to the indexer. That is how the license works. So in other words, you might have a license for 5 gigabytes per day, meaning that you can send to an indexer as much as 5 gigabytes of logging messages per day to be indexed. And that's the limit of the license. So additional search heads do not consume the license. Other forwarders do not consume the license. The only thing that consumes the license is how much data you're sending into the indexer. So given that, you should know that you can download Splunk for free and trial it. You just simply go to the Splunk website and you go to the download page, and let me very briefly show you how to do this if I can share my screen here. Let's see, which I cannot. So let me become a presenter. There we go. Now I should be able to do that. Give me a second here. And I will share my browser. There we go. Let me let me go here. Let me go here. And let me go here. Now this is the Splunk website. You may have seen it. When you want to download Splunk, you go here to Products and click on Splunk Enterprise. Then you click on Download Splunk here in the middle. And you can see all the different platforms on which you can install Splunk Enterprise. Windows, Linux, Solaris, OS 10, etc. A variety of things here for you to use. Now, when you go to click on a particular file to download, it will bring you to a screen where you can either create your free Splunk account and get the download, or log in if you already have a free Splunk account. Now, if you download Splunk, you can use it for free as long as you index 500 megabytes of logging messages per day or less. You can use it forever for free. So we encourage all of you to do that and your enterprises, and you can actually send real data to it and see how you can use it in your enterprises. Once you get past 500 megabytes per day, that's when you need to come to GTRI to purchase additional licensing capacity. Okay? So we hope that this has been a useful and informative introduction to Splunk for all of you. We encourage you to try it in your own enterprises, keeping in mind that Splunk can look at virtually any logging messaging from any source whatsoever. And feel free to pass along any questions you have to myself or Scott. I believe in the slide deck, Scott's email will be there on one of the slides. Scott, it's just your email, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Point, yes. You can put yours in if you want in the chat.
That's okay. Feel free to email Scott for any questions you have, and GTRI stands ready to help you for any of your Splunk needs. And thank you for attending this free virtual bootcamp. And back to you, Scott, if you have anything additional to say.
All I've got left is that I will kind of hang on the line for a little while for people with questions, and then the lab again will be open until about midnight Eastern time, when we'll reclaim the instances on AWS. That's where they're at right now. So feel free to play with it, and hopefully this was educational for you. Thanks a lot. Let me know if you got questions. There's one question about who wrote the application management app. That particular app, I do believe, is a Splunk app, but it's mainly designed for demos, and so I don't know that that's necessarily publicly available. But that's where that one actually came from.